obviously this is a forum of indie fragrances. How do you guys feel that the bigger brands are feeling about indie fragrances? It's part of it is, can't we all just get along? The other part of it is there is no denying the explosion of the indie fragrances. Do you see, and whoever wants to answer this, I'm guessing Pamela, but if anyone else wants to, do you imagine, or actually this could be a fact, that some of the bigger brands are hiring some of the more youthful noses?
You know, it's interesting to me. I think the big brands are absolutely watching what's happening in the niche category. It is about looking at the craftsmanship, wanting to go back to the craftsmanship and the origins of fragrance development. And I think the perfect example of that is Estee Lauder and Tom Ford, and the collaboration of big engine, big manufacturer creating a beautiful artisan line of fragrances for Tom Ford. And so absolutely, everybody's watching the niche category. Everybody's looking, including our consumers, looking for the niche category to bring them new olfactive directions. Part of that is the niche players, like all of these companies in this room. They're not doing market research that waters down the fragrance to make it liked by everybody. It's okay if the fragrance is a little polarizing. It's okay to try a new olfactive category and be a little bit avant-garde and innovative. And this is what is shaking up our business right now. So I do think the big companies are watching. I do think that more and more you're going to see larger companies buying smaller niche players and embracing their creativity and the ability to tread in new olfactive categories and notes.
I'm looking at you, MJ. I'm thinking you're the one who can answer this, but if anyone else wants to jump in too. I mean, you are a writer. How important do you think it is when people do buy a fragrance? Do you think it is the story behind it? Do you think it is the juice? Do you think the bottle? Does one precede the other? And one of my peeves in certain fragrances that they'll spend, it seems to me like they'll spend a lot of money on the ads and not quite as much on the juice, in my humble opinion.
Well, especially lately. Yeah.
So even more and more.
I
mean, it seems like it's been that way a while.
Well, from what I knew about the fragrance industry back when I was working at Charles the Ritz, no. There was a lot of money spent working on those new fragrances on the juice. When I've read now on the big companies, not so much. Ads are a fortune. I mean, you can't get away from them being a fortune. So you kind of have no choice but to spend a lot of money on ads if you're going to advertise, and it's hard to do any important launch without ads. I guess I could speak to this more from my background in advertising than I can from writing the Book of Lost Fragrances, but one of the things about fragrance or anything that's ephemeral like that is that if you can appeal to someone's emotional sense first, then they come to your product with a preconceived notion. And so they're that much more willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we know this from celebrity. People like things they don't actually like at all because they think they're important or hot or chic or smart. And that's the same with any product, especially with fragrance. So I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of celebrity fragrances that nobody thinks are particularly fabulous sell so well, because it's not about, do I like this scent? It's about, how do I feel about J-Lo? So, you know, in niche, certainly this isn't an issue, but with big brands, it's the bottle has to represent the image, but the image has to come first.
Right, right. Well, Paul and Eddie, when people smell your scents, oh wait, did you want to add something to it? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that from my experience in just listening to customers, the packaging, the bottle, the ad is the first sale, but it's not the second sale. The first sale is how it looks like, if it got them to pick it up, what was attractive to it. And probably 80% of it is that first sale. Is if it doesn't look good on the shelf, they're not going to be drawn to even pick it up to know if they're going to enjoy it. The second sale is how's the juice. If it doesn't smell good, they'll have a beautiful bottle on their shelf, and that's all they're going to have.
Isn't that one of the largest business problems right now in the industry that I read a lot about, is first sale but no second sale? Isn't that like so much is dying?
Yes, and so that's why you have so many, the life cycle of a new fragrance is much shorter, because what's happening is a lot of companies, particularly in the economic downturn, were testing fragrances to make sure they had broad appeal, and every fragrance that launched smelled the same. You lost the innovation, you lost the uniqueness. And so what's happening is the customer's buying the fragrance or getting it as a gift, and she's smelling it, she's saying, it's not memorable, it's not unique, it's not distinctive, it's not me. Okay, I'm not going to buy it again, and the fragrance will not succeed. So what's really the key is the repeat purchase, and that's all about distinctiveness, getting your customer to fall in love with the juice. And I do believe that fragrance junkie that I talked about earlier, the woman who really loves fragrance, she is out there, she's looking at the bottle, she's inspired by the story, but it's ultimately the juice that makes her fall in love and keeps her as a customer and makes her ultimately a loyal consumer of the brand.
No, I think we could summarize this in saying that the first sale is about desire and identification, and the second sale about addiction.
Yeah, identification is a really big thing. I think people are proud to say what they're wearing. It's almost like a badge of honor, especially if people haven't heard of it before, or if it's... One of my favorite fragrances is from Hampton Sun, the Sun Care line. Who'd have thunk it? Like, I love telling that story. Like, so a fragrance is sold by a story, but I think the wearer also tells the story, which also makes it even more interesting. I think last question, because we're going to open up to your own questions soon, but just Paul and Eddie, since you guys are the most non-olfactive of the group, what has been the most interesting thing that you've learned in this fragrance journey, as it were? Trust your gut? As far as coming out with these fragrances that have done very well.
I think you have to, we're talking a lot about mass and about, the market research and how it's going to appeal to this broad base or whatever you're trying to appeal. We're not trying to necessarily appeal to anyone. It's really about the story we want to tell and how does this represent how it encapsulates our brand and what we want to put forth. And I think that if anyone stays true to that, you're putting out something that you're passionate about and that's really honest, and I think that shows in the end result. And I think that that's what we learned, is that we should stick to the things that we feel are right for us, and hopefully there'll be a consumer base for that.
Actually, I have one last question I'd love you all to answer. I don't want to say trend because I hate that word, but from where I sit, it seems like the fragrances that are hot right now are ones that comfort you because of what's going on in the world. Do any of you feel the same way, or what do you think people are into these days or tired of?
Well, I can answer that.
Answer.
I'm sorry, I'm a big mouth and showing off a lot. No. Anyway, the way I would answer that is, we know that in times of economic hardship, we want comforting scents. We do. And we know that vanilla, and sandalwood, and amber, these warm, nuzzly notes, make us feel safe and comfortable. I can tell you that both Nordstrom and Sephora have been doing extensive research on their fragrance business because they suffered over the past couple of years. And we had a panel back in March on this very topic. Nordstrom is implementing extensive training to their sales associates. They're also changing the way they sell fragrance. They're getting rid of those spritzers. They're sampling and saying, let me call you in a day or two and see if you like the sample. They're training staff, and it's very critical that education of staff is a key priority, because they realize that the customer can go on the internet and learn more about that fragrance than they can in the store. And yet here they have her captive smelling in the department, and yet the girls aren't educated. The other thing is Sephora is actively going after training of their sales team through Sephora University. And so I know that that's a big priority for department stores and retailers in general, because they're getting killed by the fact that the customer is not in the fragrance department. We really sent her away to other places.
And Jade, I want to go back to something that you said for a second. I have my own question. You were saying samples. This is my naivete. Do a number of brands send out samples? Who
yeah,
does? Like
a lot of niche brands that
you get online, or you get them at the store?
Well, let me just talk to that. So sampling is probably the most important way to get a consumer into your brand. And many retailers are sampling online. So Sephora, when you go to buy online, you can check out and get a free sample, choice of 3 fragrances, if you're part of their customer club program. So sampling, many brands are sampling. They're doing, of course, scent strip sampling in magazines still. And that business continues to be healthy and to grow. But in addition, there are a lot of vinyl card sampling going on through the internet. So you can see the brand, you can get the sample, and you can really close the relationship, so to speak. So sampling is big, and it's growing, and it's really a part of how you get your customer to fall in love.
But there are a lot of blogs that are sampling on their own, having nothing to do with the customer, which is what I was using a lot.
Right.
Somebody buying a bottle of decanting and selling tiny little samples that were easy to get. You know, put them in your shopping cart. I was buying 10, 15 at a time, and it was fat. You can even get vintage stuff that way, and it's really exciting.
Because I love the idea of Warby Parker for eyeglasses, and it just, you know, you can get, I think, up to 3 pair with your prescription, and like the whole scent thing seems like a.
Yeah, well, we're trying something too with the book. Is that we have a scent that Joya made that was inspired by the book, and everybody who pre-orders the book, up to 2,000 people, are going to get a little sample of the fragrance. So that's like a brand new thing that I would encourage a lot of people to think more about, not just working with perfume on perfume, but how can you integrate perfume into so many other things, like you were doing. But there's so many, even mass ways to do that, that nobody, like sheets, when you buy sheets at Macy's or Bloomingdale's, I mean, just go on and on about different ways to connect.
Yep, synergy.
So, I can't remember your name, but I just heard a blip about you saying that maybe there would be an interest in some big brands buying up little brands, or I guess in fashion, you know, you have these like, at one time they were relatively unknown, let's say Philip Lim or Derek Lam, and then you had these, you know, big financial backers come in and say, wow, we love what you're doing, we want to back you. I mean, do you see that happening in fragrance, and maybe people are walking around shopping these niche brands, not just for their creative inspiration, but maybe to just foster this whole industry, saying, wow, you guys are totally awesome, we love what you're doing, and we want to help support that idea?
I think that's going on absolutely all the time. And I mean, if you look at brands like Michael Kors, Donna Karan, you know, they all began with one fragrance in their younger lives. And I do think that, you know, there is a certain hesitation to invest in very tiny brands. I think the big companies are always looking, they're always aware, they're watching what's creative. Look at Jo Malone. You know, there are just so many brands that have resonated over time, and large companies like Lauder have swallowed them up, because that does give Lauder the reach to get a more niche customer. So yes, I do think it goes on all the time. I do think that many of the large companies are watching, but they're watching to see that you get to a certain level of acceptance and distribution.
Can you put a number on that certain level of acceptance? We were talking about that before. Whether it's financial or the number of doors that it's sold in.
Give us a goal, Pam.
You know, I can't give a number. I could say that, you know, typically investors like to see you get to the 10 million mark.
Okay.
A healthy, nice little number there, 20 million, to like you and see that you're profitable. But again, I think it varies by brand, and it varies by you know, where you are in terms of niche, if you're in men's, if you're in, you know, very high-end apothecary, or you're in very high-end fine fragrance. So, you know, I think there definitely is a continual interest in what's happening in this room by everyone in the industry, because this is where the trends come from, the street and from creative entrepreneurs like you have in this room.